DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Keith Kaminsky, fucking good in the ball!
Santel, all the way to the basket, foul, lays it in for
2! Hey, high school basketball fans, welcome to the Upstate Hoops Podcast here on Monday, February 17th, 2025. Happy President's Day to you. School's off today, all week actually, but there's a lot of action for those students playing high school basketball. I'm Jim Sinicropi along with Paul Russo and Kyle Evans here inside the FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls, New York. And today's Upstate Hoops Podcast and all of our coverage of Wayne Finger Lakes High School basketball is brought to you thanks to the support of Little John and Barbie Orthodontics. Check out Dr. Rod and Dr. Liz online at littlejohnortho.com. Cicino's Pizzeria and Restaurant. Order online at cicinos.com. And DeSanto Propane. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto. Welcome in, fellas. It was a pretty good week, especially if you're Minders. Maybe not if you're Waterloo. Boys, at least. Good week if you're Landon Washburn of Honeoye. And there's a lot of good games this week. A few more coming up. And then, a week from now, we're going to be breaking down sectional brackets on this show. They'll come out probably Friday, Saturday of this week. And sectionals is upon us with just 1 week left in the regular season. So we're going to take a look at all the action from the week. We're going to take a look at some of the games that matter this coming week. And, then it's time to buckle in for the postseason. So here we go. First of all, Paul, you and I called the Minders Whitman game, and the next night you came back and called the Waterloo Minders game. And before we get into it too far, we said, boy, this is a big week for Minders. They could either go completely in the tank or maybe turn their season around if they win 2 or 3 of these games. Well, they beat Whitman first game, then they beat Waterloo, and then they went on the road and beat Newark in overtime.
Pretty interesting. I know myself, and I know you talked around a little bit too there pregame on Tuesday, but talking with a couple of the players, some of the coaches, they were kind of like, if we can get 2 of 3, we'll consider a pretty successful week. And they go 3 for 3 on the week. Hard to complain about that. And honestly, they might kind of take the headlines for, I'm going to steal one of my favorite college football terms here. Kind of a blood week it ended up becoming in a way for around the Wayne Finger Lakes a little bit for some teams. We saw some shake-up on both league standings and the sectional standings. It was a pretty exciting final full week of regular season basketball.
And on the other side of things, in the West, Honeoye, Landon Washburn, Kyle, what's going on with this kid? And, how good is Honeoye?
Yeah, Honeoye is legit. They just won their 18th straight game today. They beat Wayland Coahocton by 40. Still waiting for the stats from Landon for this game. But as you mentioned, he scored 47 earlier this week. He's averaging, I added it up earlier, 25 points a game. Again, he's just a sophomore. And, they haven't lost since their season opener to South Seneca.
Yeah, back in the end of November.
Yep. So I would definitely keep an eye out on them, and I think they're legit. And I think they're better than South Seneca. Yeah.
Well, they lost that opener, and then they won the rematch.
Yep.
So, and since then, South Seneca's dropped a second game. Honeoye still at 1 loss here as we are post-Valentine's Day. But let's take a look at the week that was in boys action first. There you get a good look at the complete rundown. On Tuesday night, you had Honeoye beating Red Jacket 82-58, and that was the night that Landon Washburn scored 47 points, a season high for anybody in the Wayne Finger Lakes this year. Pretty impressive, 47 points in a high school game. Then you had Palmac losing to Geneva. The Geneva boys had a good week too. Opened it up Tuesday night, defeating Palmac by 15 points. Gananda defeated Red Creek on Tuesday night, 62-53. Owen Switzer had 15 points for the Blue Panthers. And then the game that we were talking about, Paul, Minders, the game we called together, Minders with a 58-51 win over Marcus Whitman. Anthony Luffman had 17. Griffin Hillmeyer had 14. Brody Royston held to 13. I guess he might have tweaked his ankle a little bit in that one too, but definitely that was an impressive win for Minders.
Yeah, it ends up being the catalyst to what ends up being about as good a week as obviously they needed. It was pretty interesting, and it was pretty interesting too to see. I guess we'll start on the Minders side of things here. I don't know if it was necessarily maybe their best game they played all year. I would argue maybe a little bit the Waterloo game the next night might have been to a degree, but
may have had a few losses that they played better. Whitman was definitely not playing at 100% as good as they could have, but Minders took advantage of it. 7-point win at home.
Right, and that was another one of the key things. Talked with Anthony Luffman a little bit pregame, one of the Minders guards, about kind of the little things, getting stuff right, and they certainly did that against Whitman. Whitman. I'd say pretty uncharacteristic game from them, all things considered in that front. Obviously, you mentioned with Royston, maybe that ankle kind of sparked up again. What was it? Was it a 1-point game going into halftime, right?
Yeah, 1 point.
I mean, it just really strange kind of how the third quarter and then fourth quarter played out for the Wildcats. But to that end,
sloppy.
But to that end, right, the Blue Devils just took advantage of what they were able to take advantage of and just catapult and get the win.
The big thing was to get that win.
Yeah.
And now, again, great. If they lose that, they went into the week Minders 8-8, so now they're 9-8. And with Waterloo and Newark still on the schedule for the rest of the week, two teams, and they'd lost to Whitman, Newark, and Waterloo the first time they played. Yeah. They really needed that win to get to 9-8. So now they go to take on Waterloo, a team who's still in contention for the Finger Lakes East title, and a 3-loss Waterloo team. Yeah. At the time, and Waterloo came to Arthur L. Baker in Seneca Falls, and Minders with a great win, 65-58 over the Tigers, behind 18 from Alan Plummer, 18 from Anthony Luffman, and a couple of big threes from Nick Manziel coming off the bench. Really actually made the difference in that game. Yeah. Dylan Caraballo had 19, and so Minders now 10-8. And then, I'll talk about that game real quick too, but I want to just jump ahead to Friday while we're talking about Minders. So now they go to Newark. And again, Newark hadn't had a great year, but they did beat Minders the first time they played in Seneca Falls. Well, this time Minders escapes in overtime with a 65-62 win behind 23 from Plummer, 16 of them in the second half, 14 from Luffman, 13 from Hillmeyer. Terrell Jenkins had 23 for Newark, who had been playing a little bit better, but still continues to lose these games. So now Minders, who entered the week at 8-8, is 11-8 and appears primed for sectionals with one game next week against Penn Yan, or tomorrow night.
Ever one of the questions in all sports, right? Would you rather be good all year or get hot at the right time? Type deal with the Minders. But to that end,
all year is the best thing, but if
correct,
you're not, might as well get hot at the right
correct,
time.
And that's the key thing, talking with a couple of their coaches too, where it's like they're getting right at the right time more than anything else, and kind of shows. And the interesting part about too is, they mentioned, Newark's still a team you can't really take all that lightly, all the things considered, and they needed an extra 4 minutes on Friday night to prove that. So, interesting game. I'll go back Wednesday quickly too here, but against Waterloo for the Blue Devils and for the Tigers as well. I mean, the Tigers were on the doorstep of pretty much almost controlling their own destiny in the Finger Lakes East. Now they're practically out of the race on the league side of things, and it ends up being a bit of a obviously rough week for them, and kind of now wonder a little bit about them going into sectional time.
Yeah, and you alluded to that. On Friday night, Waterloo comes back and absolutely gets run in Geneva, 76-36, a 40-point win for the Panthers, who now hold second place in the Finger Lakes East. And it was Caden Larson. The Panthers had 5 guys in double digits.
Yeah.
Larson Porter, 14, DePatrick Overstreet, 12, Jazeer White, 11, Andrew Green, 11, and Xavier Praler with 10. 5 guys double digits, not too bad. Is, like I said, tough week, Kyle, for Waterloo.
Yeah, I actually talked to Coach Ed Collins of Geneva after this game because I couldn't believe a 40-point difference. And he said that, Geneva just did everything well. They just outplayed a Waterloo, and he said the key was the defense. He thought the defense was very good, and as you see, 36 points from a team that is led by Cam Jacobs, who, remember, broke the school record with 3-pointers just a week ago. So, yeah, I was very impressed, and, yeah, Waterloo's definitely hit a bump. Just the second time they've lost back-to-back games this year, and probably not the best time to be slumping. Opposite of Minders,
You lose your crosstown rival and then your other crosstown rival, so they did not defend the borders very well this week in Waterloo, on the boys' side at least. Some other games from boys' action this week. Clyde Savannah had a great game on Thursday night against Gananda. Panthers held a 47-41 advantage at halftime, and then Clyde outscored them 23-13 in the third, took a 4-point lead in the fourth. Back and forth it went before Cooper Grassel hit the shot of the night, a 3-pointer from the top of the key with 11 seconds left, leading the Panthers to their 4th straight wins. And Gananda, 11 3-pointers, Clyde, 9 3-pointers. Zymir Smith, 28 points for Clyde, Tanner Bush, 25 points, Dane Brisky, 21 points, 5 3-pointers. Gananda, 30 points from Cooper Grassel, 25 points from Hunter Vogt, 8 3-pointers from Grassel. And, Clyde is starting to play better. And Gananda is every bit, they've been maybe one of the most consistent teams in all the White Finger Lakes all year long.
Yeah, I also spoke to the Clyde coach after the game, Mike Canale, and he said, they're definitely improving the last 5 or 6 games. It could have actually went Clyde's way. One of their players was fouled. They didn't get a call.
Yeah.
And then that 3 happened, and Clyde actually even had a chance at the buzzer to tie the game. So yeah, they played that Gananda team who's really tough. I mean, Gananda played Lions tough at times. They played ER tough. I do like this Gananda team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. In the Finger Lakes West this week, South Seneca beat Red Jacket 69-32, behind 17 points from Kenny Halsey and 16 from Logan Laverick. They improved to 17-2. Honeoye, after Landon Washburn's 47-point outburst, played Naples, Of course, got the win 75-45, 37 points for Landon Washburn. Then on Saturday, they defeated Genesee Valley Belfast to improve to 17-1, 26 points for Landon Washburn on 5 threes. And then today they got another win. No report yet on how many Washburn scored, but they're 18-1 now. What a season for Honeoye, right?
I mean, I don't know about necessarily the out of the nowhere element of it, but I mean, they were certainly not on our radar to start the year. And it's always good to get more teams kind of in the mix here. Obviously, I know I'm stating the obvious probably there a little bit, but Landon Washburn, sophomore, we were doing the math a couple weeks ago on him, trying to figure out what he could possibly get to this year, and 47-37 certainly helps get to the 1,500 mark closer for the year. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Entering today, I had his numbers here: 1,114 points.
Yeah.
He had 460 going into today on the season. And like I said, averaging 25 over 18 games.
crazy.
Mm-hmm. Something to look forward to in the postseason and next year. A lot of points from Landon Washburn and the kind of resurgence of the Bulldogs of Honeoye. Kick it over to the girls' side. Full week of action. Final full week. Starting off on Monday with a big game for the girls in the Finger Lakes East. And it saw Palmac getting a 58-49 win over Bloomfield. Taryn Goodness had 18 for Palmac. Kayla McCombs had 29 for Bloomfield in the losing effort. Bloomfield's kind of taken their lumps in the East the past couple weeks. Waterloo girls defeated Midlake 63-33 on Monday, and we bring up this game because Addison Bree became the 8th player this year in the Wayne Finger Lakes to join the 1,000 point club. So congratulations to Addison Bree. What year is she?
Junior.
She's a junior, so she'll continue to score more points heading into next year's senior year. Lost kind of in stuff we talk about here. We mentioned it throughout the year, but, you know, frankly, if you're looking for Coach of the Year candidates in the girls' side, Liz Royston has to be at the top of the list. Marcus Whitman girls defeated Red Jacket 53-18 on Monday, and then on Friday defeated HAC 64-39 to improve their record to 16-1. And so this is a program that's been building over the past few years, and she's got this core group of kids that are now fully invested in her system. And, you know, next thing's up, sectional title hopes, you know, for Liz Royston's Marcus Whitman Wildcats.
Yeah, I mean, it I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, it sucks that, frankly, one game probably took them out of the West contention too this year. I know, we don't
Lost to Dundee Bradford.
right,
I think
and
they play again this week.
they do. They play this week, but because of the way the schedules kind of work out at the moment, it's Dundee Bradford's to lose. And I mean, yeah, I give a lot of credit to this Whitman as a whole, as you mentioned, Jim, because that's just a couple of really good programs that they work off each other, they feed off each other, and yeah, I mean, it's a quality team that I think. I don't know. I don't want to maybe give too much away for like next week's podcast necessarily, but I don't think you can take them lightly in B2 on the girls' side for sectionals. I just don't think you can.
No, and Kyle, they don't play that difficult of a schedule. You know, they did lose to Dundee Bradford, which was probably the best team they played so far. We'll see how they do this week. But, you know, I certainly think they're up for the challenge, even though they may not be the favorite in B2. I mean, they certainly got to be, you know, among the favorites.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of said it a lot earlier this year. I didn't really like how their schedule played out. It didn't seem like they really had too many tough games, because you look at some of these teams at the bottom of the West. I mean, you got 5 wins, 3 wins, 2 wins. I mean, they beat up on those teams, 2 wins each there. There's 6 wins out of their 16 there. So, but yeah, Dundee Bradford, you know, they played them. They play them actually in 3 hours for the rematch, 5:30 tonight. Yep. So we'll see what happens if they can split the season series.
Also kicking off the week on Monday night, the Lions girls played Minders, a little intra-league contest, and won 66-43 to improve to 14-2. And I got to bring this one up. Naples defeats Geneva 44-40. Naples girls 9-8, winning program. Congratulations to the Big Green. We'll see how they can close out their season as well. On Wednesday night, you saw Gananda square off against Red Creek in a game that the Lady Blue Panthers won 55-39 behind 24 points from Avery Hoffman. And Leah Buffin had 18 points, 5 3-pointers, and that raised her season total to 56 total 3-pointers made, the single season school record. So congratulations to Leah. She's certainly made a lot of threes for them this year. 56. Friday night, Bloomfield against Waterloo. A chance for Bloomfield maybe to get something back against the top team in the East, but it was a 10-point win for Waterloo. Addison Bree had 21 points. Ashlyn Wright had 18 to lead Bloomfield. And then Gananda and Williamson went to overtime on Friday night. Gananda against Williamson Marion, I should say. Another program similar to like the Naples girls that I just mentioned that are starting to have a resurgence. But tonight it was Gananda 55-50 in overtime getting the win. Williamson Marion falls to 9-11. Gananda improved to 12-5. Lions back on at it again at home hosting East Rochester. Jayla Bell had 19 points as Lions win 70-42 to improve to 16-2. And then on Saturday, a nice win for the Palmac girls against Fairport in Palmac, 67-62 in overtime. 24 points from Shelby Greer, 16 points from Taryn Goodness. So there you have it. There's all the action on the girls' side as well. And, you know, you see Waterloo just continuing to show that they're the class of the Wayne Finger Lakes on the girls' side. Tough week for Bloomfield with a couple of losses. Good week for Palmac, kind of bouncing back and getting ready for sectionals. They're currently at 14-5 record. Gananda girls looking good. Lions girls continue to win. And, yeah, one more week left in the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think in terms of like the teams that we have in pretty high regard, Bloomfield certainly probably has had the worst week at it. Kind of took me a little bit off guard. I figured maybe they'd get one of those wins against Palmac or Waterloo, admittedly, but certainly not the case there. But yeah, Palmac, that one might be the game of the week for me on the girls' side, in all honesty. Beating Fairport, it's a really good team out of Double A. Talk about litmus tests going into sectional time. That's a pretty good one to check off and achieve for the Red Raiders.
Yeah, and Pelmac's actually won 7 straight games, so they've been really hot as of late, and again, great time to be hot.
And I believe they are they in B1 with Waterloo? They're in A, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that'll make Waterloo breathe a sigh of relief because they've had some great postseason games in the past few years. Now, to talk about Bloomfield, Kyle, Bloomfield, a Finger Lakes West team playing in the East. Imagine if they were in the West this year. Now, that would have been a rival for Marcus Whitman, to play twice. Did they match up at all this year out of league?
I don't think so.
I don't think they did either, but you understand why teams sometimes move from league to get a tougher schedule if they feel they got a really strong team and a good sectional run. But I don't love it. I think if Bloomfield stayed in the West, we would have had a really good battle. With Whitman,
Just like last year.
Yeah. So
Yeah, kind of, not to go to whatever on it, but kind of sounds like it was kind of a sports swap of sorts for a couple other sports involved on swapping leagues around, and didn't seem like everybody might have been fully on board with it at the time. So, yeah, I mean, it sucks, but at the same token, kind of highlights, I think, maybe too, just how good that Bloomfield Bonner program is, though. At the same token, they came over to the East this year and
held their own,
competed pretty damn well.
Yep.
Yeah, and it hasn't been to the last couple of weeks where they've fallen off, losing 3 of their 5 games. Had they not, lost 3 of 5, they would be right in this race with Newark, Pelmac, Waterloo.
We're not talking blowouts here. I mean, they lost to Waterloo by 10. They lost to Pelmac by 9.
Yeah.
They did get swept by Pelmac, which is kind of crazy to me too.
Yeah.
They got blown out in the second game of the year by Pelmac. It wasn't close.
So, but nonetheless, Bloomfield 13-7 might have cost themselves some seeding, by playing in a tougher league. But what's coming up will be the sectionals, where this team's destiny will truly be defined. So with that being said, what do we have? This is our second to the last power rankings of the year. We'll do one next year to wrap up next week to wrap up the regular season, and then when they go to sectionals, we no longer worry about power rankings because the power rankings are determined by the brackets.
Yeah.
So, anyways, let's take a look. Start with the boys. Wayne number 1, Lions number 2, and it's close, right? The Lions get a number 1 vote.
Yep, me again this week.
Man, didn't Wayne beat Lions?
Yeah, but
Tough to give him a
go back to last week though. I mean, Wayne lost, Lions didn't.
True.
And, to I guess maybe remind everybody, if you win, or if you win, I'm not going to really
recency
I
bias.
can't ding you. I can't ding you. So
recency bias.
no, I don't know if it's so much recency bias, but I'll take a card out of the college football playoff discussion, and I can't hinder you for going out and doing what you're supposed to do in sports, which is win.
Speaking of that, Honeoye, number 3. Now, if you were taking bets on this, and Honeoye being 3 on February 17th, back in December 1st, you would have got some pretty good odds.
Oh, for sure.
But the Bulldogs keep rolling. And again, tough to tell. They did have some good wins. You never see Honeoye play Wayne or Geneva or Minders or Waterloo. You just don't see it. But this year would have been fun to see maybe 1 or 2 of those out-of-conference games. Yeah. But great season for Honeoye. The emergence of Landon Washburn, number 3 in our power rankings. And then Geneva, kind of been up and down, back and forth, but they are coming on strong, heading into the postseason now up to 4. And then Waterloo, who had been as high as 2, falls to 5. Marcus Whitman doesn't seem to be too much hurt by the loss to Minders. I think they stay right at 6, right?
No, they did not move from last week spot-wise.
Yeah, and then Minders with their big week jumps up to number 7. I think I had them at 6 in my rankings. I did nudge them ahead of Whitman just because, what a week. Not only did you win Whitman, which probably wouldn't have been enough for my rankings to get them to number 6, but, you come back and beat Waterloo and Newark 3-0 week. They go from unranked up to number 7, and all of a sudden there's hope in Seneca Falls for a sectional run, defending that championship from last year. East Rochester 8, South Seneca 9, continues to win as well, and Gananda 10. I mean, that's a pretty solid group of sectional championship contenders, I think. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting on the minor side. I guess I'm the bad guy out of the bunch here. I only put them at 10 this week,
10, wow.
only because
They beat Waterloo. That goes against what you were saying about what you've done for me lately with Lions.
sure to that end, but to what have you done for me lately too? The teams I had ahead of them, specifically Gananda, South Seneca, they didn't lose it all last week. I can't.
Neither did Minders.
I'm aware, but I can't put a team that I didn't have ranked in the first place. I have 2 teams I did have ranked.
Where did you have Minders in your poll?
Yeah, I had them 5.
5, wow.
I was impressed. Not just the wins in the same week, the teams they played. I mean, Marcus Whitman, I was shocked that, I thought Marcus Whitman was going to win that game.
I thought it was going to be a really good game. If I had to pick a team heading into it, I probably would have picked Marcus Whitman just based on the way everything's gone. But Minders flipped the script this week. So yeah. I mean, and as far as Newark's not even in the top 10.
Yeah.
Not that they should be because they keep losing, but they aren't losing by margins. They're obviously, what would happen, honestly, and it's tough to say, but let's say Newark played South Seneca tonight. Who would you take?
I mean, I'd probably lean South Seneca personally at this point, but I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because for me, I personally do go a little bit deeper only because I try and, get a better, I don't know about grasp on everything as a whole, right? But I have Newark in my de facto what I would call 15th spot if we were to go deeper in the rankings still, just because they've been playing teams tough. I mean, obviously, and
We've had
stuff like that.
Win-loss record speaks for itself with those guys, right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's just one of those things for me. I think looking at it, I guess I'd lean South Seneca at the moment, but I mean, Newark could very well just go down there or they'd come up there and get a win. I mean, you don't know until we actually see it in the hypothetical sense.
Yeah, I'd probably roll with South Seneca too, but I do think Newark would make it close. And Newark was actually up 15 on Minders. And Minders, stormed back in the second half. So Newark has a habit of, getting these leads and blowing them. So they're not as bad as their record is. They could be better if they close out some of these games.
Right. They're 8-11. They have started to play better, I think.
Yep.
And could be a factor in sectionals. It's just the season's about to end and we haven't seen it yet, So, I mean, they beat Wayne, right?
Yep.
So it shows that they can beat anybody. But they're going to have to string a few together here if they want to, win sectional. So let's take a look at the girls' power rankings. And there you have, of course, Waterloo at the top spot. Not too far behind Newark and Lions. I mean, 3 really, really good teams heading into the postseason right there. Marcus Whitman 4. We just talked about Liz Royston's season. Pelmac tied with Marcus Whitman at 4. We talked about how good Pelmac's playing. I mean, there's some good teams at the top of this power ranking on the girls' side. And then, Dundee Bradford gets there at 6. Tough to not have them ahead of Marcus Whitman, I would think, right?
Yeah. We'll see tonight in the rematch.
Yeah, tonight, that's the thing about these power rankings. They don't mean anything. They actually play tonight, so that'll no need to discuss. It'll be determined on the court. Bloomfield at 7, Gananda 8. Clyde really coming on lately, too, at 9. And then you got Geneva and Penyan tied for 10. Geneva Penyan not winning a lot of games, but playing some close games, maybe a sleeper heading into postseason. Geneva, nice resurgence for their program. Didn't play too difficult to schedule, but still to be winning. And I mentioned other teams like Williamson and Marion and Naples also starting to, Naples 9-8. They're above 500. It's really great to see. That was a program that I wasn't sure a couple years ago if they were going to field a team. They may not have. They may have taken a year off. Trying to remember. But, I mean, when I look at the girls, the main thing I had was as impressive as the winning has been for Marcus Whitman. I think I had them at 6. I had Pelmac and Dundee ahead of them. But other than that, I'm pretty much in line. My top 3 was Waterloo, Newark, Lions. But I had Dundee Bradford at 4 and Pelmac at 5.
Yeah.
Anything you guys want to comment on?
Yeah, so for me, I'm actually going to throw the standings back up here just for a moment. To just kind of show, I mean, 1, 2, 3, and then you go kind of to the bottom here with 8, 9, and 10. They pretty much have been that for kind of weeks on end now at this point, collectively speaking, in the grand scheme of it. What really threw, I think, us, the voting wise for a loop was kind of what do we do with Bloomfield for the week more than anything else. Obviously, we know they're really good, but 1 and 2, kind of a tough hang.
Yeah, you're going to drop.
Obviously, and I think that's what kind of threw everything for a loop, right? I mean, Marcus Whitman and Pelmac were both tied for 6th last week and move up as being tied 4th for this week because of this middle ground just kind of being a mishmash of about 4 teams all year. What do we kind of do? And it really reflected this week in terms of the voting.
Yeah.
In fact, Bloomfield and Waterloo on the boys' side are the only 2 teams I think that have remained ranked this year to have fallen by the 3-point or by the 3-spot mark and not fall out of the rankings completely. So that's pretty, I think, telling of where we kind of stand maybe on both sides throughout the whole year this year.
Yeah, I had Pelmac locked in at 4, just because of that 7-game win streak. They just beat Fairport, really good team. And then I had to drop Bloomfield to 6. Not just the 1 and 2 week, the 2 and 3 in their last 5 puts them down there for me. And Marcus Whitman, I put him 5, but again, like you mentioned, their schedule doesn't really represent, I think, how, like, they're good, but are they that good? I don't know.
Big game tonight, actually, in about an hour and a half. One to watch what happens there. Not only Dundee Bradford's very good now. Would I feel horrible about this Whitman team if Dundee Bradford wins by 5 points? No, but if they win by 20 points, then maybe it would have us thinking, geez, maybe Whitman isn't quite as good as we thought, despite all these wins they keep rattling off. So, and then when I look at the girls' rankings, Gananda on the way up are all really, really, really good teams.
Yeah.
Like really good teams. Sectional championship quality teams. You get down to our 9 and 10, which was like Clyde and Penyan and Geneva. Yeah. It might need something special, although Clyde really has been trending. So there you have it. The regular season ends Thursday. Today's Monday. There's not a lot of games this week, but let's look at some of the games of consequence, perhaps, that remain on the schedule this week.
Yeah, we're going to start over on the girls' side here. So Finger Lakes West and Wayne County both have their leagues kind of locked up here at this point. So there's nothing really in terms of like standing-wise consequence.
But you're saying like if Whitman beats Dundee Bradford tonight, they'll be tied.
Yeah.
So Dundee Bradford clinched a share.
Yeah.
Dundee, they have a half-game lead. Dundee Bradford would in that situation still.
Why did
South Seneca.
Whitman got another game to play?
No, the South Seneca cancellations have kind of thrown everything for a loop
right.
on that side.
I don't
So
know what's going on with that program, but they canceled some games.
yeah. The interesting part is the Finger Lakes East on the girls' side. So Waterloo controls their own destiny. They have a game in hand.
They usually do.
So as long as they beat Wayne, that Pelmac at Newark game becomes a moot point. However, the interesting part is if Waterloo does lose to Wayne and Newark beats Pelmac, then we have a tie-up for first place, and they split the season series, so that becomes a co-champion situation.
Regardless, Wednesday night, Pelmac at Newark, that's a great game.
Yeah.
That's a great game.
So
as you mentioned, Pelmac red hot, Newark playing well.
Yeah.
So that would be a good one to watch. How about on the boys?
Yeah, the boys' side is a little bit more interesting. We have stuff going on a little bit all over the place. So really on the east side, the true game of consequence here is going to be Wayne at Waterloo. Wayne, again, controls their own destiny. They have a half-game lead on what is now the second-place Geneva Panther squad because of Waterloo's
Waterloo
week
play
last
them
week.
right out, so
Yeah.
it's up to Geneva maybe to grab a share.
So if Wayne comes back, gets a little bit of revenge in Waterloo tomorrow night, then it doesn't matter. However,
Waterloo beat Wayne the first time
Correct.
in Ontario. Now they got to come to Waterloo. Waterloo having a nightmare week.
Yep.
Maybe a chance to right the ship at the last moment before postseason.
And for Geneva, they're done on the league side.
Yep.
So that's why that's that half-game situation. That's why for Wayne, as long as they get revenge and beat Waterloo tomorrow night, then they're outright league champions.
What about the West?
In the West, for as much as we've been obviously talking about Honeyway, it gets a little bit interesting. So they go to Bloomfield, rivalry game there.
Bloomfield boys just not quite. I don't think they're going to have enough there to pull an upset.
However, if it does happen, then things get interesting on that Dundee-Bradford at South Seneca game at the same time going on in Seneca County here.
Yeah, and again, sectional points still at play throughout.
Yep.
Wayne County.
Yeah, Wayne County's where also
Again, Lions not in Wayne County; they're
it
independent.
It gets really interesting. So it begins on 2/18. Now the 2/19 game I've included here because if East Rochester beats Gananda tomorrow night, then they are in control in Wayne County of their own destiny. If they go in and beat Clyde Savannah at that point, they would win Wayne County. However, it's interesting. Say they beat Gananda, but then lose to Clyde Savannah, then it goes back to Gananda being league champions.
Yeah,
So
and we just talked about how good Clyde's playing. Gananda is I mean, it's been a good year in Wayne County. Would like to see what it would have been like maybe if Lions was still playing in Wayne County. I imagine Lions would probably come out on top, but I guess we won't ever know. But as it stands, this is a great little end of the season race in Wayne County.
Yeah, we got a few of them still going on. Obviously, there's two on the girls' side that locked up and clinched and everything. But yeah, pretty interesting. Obviously, on the girls' side, there's only 3 days of games remaining. Boys' side have 4 days of games, so lots still to play for on the sectional side. We saw some movement last week with some, like I mentioned, it ended up being a little bit of a blood week of sorts. So we saw Geneva able to get a couple more points in the hand on the A side. On the B1 side, Waterloo took a little bit of a hit. Minders was able to come up a little bit, so on and so forth on that front too. So going to be interesting. Really looking forward to next Monday when we come back in here and we take a look at all those
the best
matchups.
show of the year. It usually goes well past an hour.
Yeah.
As we go through break. Kyle, last week of the regular season, what are you looking out for this week?
Yeah, just some of the matchups you mentioned, and then there's a non-league game tonight, Geneva Avon. They're in the same sectional class.
Avon's having a great year.
Yeah, they're very good. So I'm interested to see how Geneva's, matches up against them with how well they've been playing. And I think that's pretty much it. Lions at World of Inquiry. It'll be the second matchup this year. Lions lost by 11 and were held to a season low 48 points. So they really gave them trouble, and I want to see if Lions can bounce back.
Especially World of Inquiry is the top seed in B1.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Minders, Waterloo, and others. B2 would be Lions and Whitman. So that is a good game to keep an eye on, not only just to see is a test for Lions, but kind of a barometer for what the number one seed in B1 looks like heading into sectionals, because they've beat everybody. They beat Lions, as you mentioned. They beat Minders. I don't know if they played Waterloo. I don't think they did.
No, not on the boys' side. No.
Right. So
I got a couple games as well here on the boys' side,
let it rip.
both involving Marcus Whitman. They play UPrep.
AAA U Prep.
Tomorrow night, AAA U Prep, and then to wrap up the regular season on Thursday rather, they play at Palmac. So a couple interesting games there to wrap up for them, and obviously too for the Red Raiders, obviously to wrap up their regular season hosting the Wildcats.
And we have a rescheduled game from last week, Thursday, Red Jacket at Red Creek. Interesting non-league game. Obviously won't really impact the standings, but just interesting to see if Red Creek can.
Both teams could use the win for sectional points. They're both having solid seasons. We're not seeing them in our top 10, but they've both
gotten votes throughout the year.
Winning records, and they both, I don't know if Red Jacket ever popped the top 10 at all this year, but I know Red Creek did.
Yeah, they both have gotten votes throughout the year at certain points. Whether or not they got to the top 10, different story. But
I think tomorrow night Minders is going to Penn too, right?
Yeah.
No.
Penn Yan comes too.
Oh, Penn Yan comes. Oh, it's senior night in Seneca Falls. And again, a chance to prove for this Minders team to prove that last week was legit. It would be just like this team to, one step forward, 2 steps back, and drop a game like this to Penn Yan. So let's hope that, to me, a comfortable win would show that, okay, this team did turn it around late in the season and are ready to defend that sectional title. So, yeah, a lot of good stuff. And, man, I can't wait till the brackets come out. I hope they get them done in a timely manner. Sometimes we wait till Sunday to see them.
They're going to have to, for sure, at least on the girls' side. They got their pre-quarterfinals on Saturday. Then on the boys' side, they're usually pretty much right until I don't think they have anything over the weekend. I could be wrong, but I don't think they do.
No.
So
We'll get them up on Finger Lakes 1, obviously, to look at before the actual show next Monday. But our sectional bracket preview is the most popular show of the year, without a doubt. Can't wait for it. Can't wait to see it. Some of the potential matchups. Love to see the semifinals. How many Wayne Finger Lakes teams can we get into a semifinal in Class A or B1 or B2? So we can see, if we go out and choose to do a semifinal doubleheader, if we can get 3 Wayne Finger Lakes teams out of the 4, I mean, that's just something that we really enjoy.
yeah, I mean, we've kind of made it now. The boys' side, not like it rotates deliberately, but when we get to the semifinal on the boys' side, usually kind of varies place to place every now and then. The girls' side, Class B, we pretty much have made a home at Honeyway Falls, Lima. So looking forward to going back there at some point this coming time. But all kidding aside, those are typically some of, at least our favorite, as you mentioned, Jim, right, games, because just the energy kind of, it always helps. The energy kind of translates well from game to game, and especially hyper-local. I mean, I know for me, I remember a couple of years ago, Minders and Waterloo playing back-to-back up at HFL in semifinals, and people kind of hung around for both games, and it just makes it for, I mean, it really just, we talk about how, like, the sectional final atmospheres are awesome and stuff like that, but those are really,
the semifinals are better.
really close to being on that same level.
I think they're better because you're in a high school gym still, at least on the boys' side. You go up to the Blue Cross, it's great. It's awesome, but it's different. And so, geez, I can go back to think of so many of them. But recently, we saw Waterloo. We saw Newark play, or Geneva play Hornell in the first half at Pittsford Sutherland of a doubleheader. And then Waterloo faced Newark in the second half. That's what I'm talking about. 3 Wayne Finger Lakes teams up at Pittsford Sutherland. Geneva won the first half. Waterloo won the second. And then 3 days later, they're playing in the Blue Cross. Yeah. Geneva versus Waterloo that year in particular. I think that was 4 years ago.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I don't want to say the year only because I don't want to drum up bad vibes. But I distinctly remember that year well. So, because if I recall right, the play-in game was in Newark against Cal Mumford, Geneva, if I'm remembering right. I could be wrong, but so.
Yeah.
Or wait, was it? Now I might be getting stuff confused. Either way.
Yeah, and then there was a COVID year. Was the year after.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Geneva was heading to the Far West Regional when COVID year.
Me and Michael Essie were on that game. When I was getting the notifications about Rudy Gobert, and I'm like, this kid's not going to end well for anybody.
Well, let's hope that the postseason doesn't get canceled due to bird flu or anything this year.
Yeah.
So any parting shots, fellas, before we wrap it up? And then again, next week's our last show. Yeah. We don't do shows once sectionals start because we're too busy doing covering sectionals.
Yeah, it's been a fun regular season.
Yep.
It was admittedly tough. I only because this year especially, it was the top of the top was really good, but it was this. It's tough. Some of the things I talked about in that first episode I worried about kind of came to fruition a little bit this year for some teams, and hopefully that's not the case going forward. But for what we had, it's been a really awesome year. First time in a couple of years, I feel like most of the games we had that we did and went out and broadcasted were tight ones for the most part.
Yeah.
And hopefully that continues on. Obviously not this week, but the week after with sectional title runs coming, and I'm really looking forward to everything and getting going here these final couple of days.
Any thoughts on the season, Kyle, as we about to put it in the rear view?
Yeah, it's definitely been a lot more interesting, I think, than past seasons in terms of competitiveness and just, like you mentioned, we still have divisional races going on. And I also think we've had more 1,000-point scores in a single season than we
Seems
ever
like
had.
every week we're crowning another one.
Yeah, and overtime games. We're up to 17 overtime games, and we had 4 in the last week. So
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy what's happening this year.
yeah, I think it's a good point. The league's been more competitive across Wayne Finger Lakes leagues across the board.
Can't forget scoring records, too. Dundee, Kendall Parker,
Yep.
Wayne, Cam Blankenberg. Am I missing one?
The girl from Gananda set the single season 3-point record this week.
Oh, and then Lions, Jay LaBelle.
Yeah.
Of course.
Oh yeah, Jay LaBelle,
Can't believe I
2,000
forgot
points.
that. Yep.
And
2,000.
all-time leading scorer in Lions history. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's been good. And again, every year I've learned is the same. The season starts, and you're not sure who's going to step up where and how it's all going to come together. And it almost feels like, oh man, none of these teams are as good as those great teams that won sectionals. Like no, I don't see many here. And then as the season goes on and they develop, you're like, wow. And it's also great to see teams that we didn't talk about a lot, like the Naples girls or Williamson Marion, or even what's going on in Red Creek. All these teams just having a semblance of a program again. I mean, there really aren't too many teams that are really just, not varsity level, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And so at least more competitive basketball. And then, of course, the big stories of the year, to me, it had been like the Waterloo boys kind of came out of nowhere, established themselves as a top team. And then the Honeoye boys and the South Seneca boys having the great seasons they're having in the West. And then also with Lions kind of bolting Wayne County and leaving everybody else behind. And you see Gananda, East Rochester, Clyde, all having great seasons and being competitive. So I think that's been the theme of the year. And that just sets us up for a real exciting run for all these teams in sectionals, which starts very soon.
Let's go brick chasing.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us here on the Upstate Who's podcast. Again, back next week to wrap up the season of our podcast with our sectional preview spectacular. Subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't. And of course, all of our audio-only podcasts are available wherever you enjoy your audio content. You can also find our show, live stream games, and local news, weather, and sports 24/7 on FingerLakes1.com. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next Monday with sectional brackets. It's going to be great. Have a good week.